All right. All right, all right, all right. Welcome to Podcastics METV. We're in the lab, the hub, starting today's show. I know you guys are used to it. We're going to have a good conversation today on healing relationships. And Heather and Dave are in the building today. As usual, I am a bit distracted setting up the Facebook, but I want to just give God a huge thank you for today. Seeing the story on Fox 2 and what that means and how important it is to continue to build the vision at hand. It's funny that this topic is today because I was just in the throes of a very deep conversation with my son. And a lot of times as parents, right, we think, when parenting doesn't end once they graduate high school. And there are some things that the kids go through where you wasn't so perfect in certain areas. And sometimes that's the part of adulthood that helps them understand that, of course, we're all not perfect. And as parents, our job is continuous, because we're out front in the race. We're going to take on certain things in this race that they have yet to take on. And so it's up to us, to build and share those types of things. But my son said something that was very important. And it was heavy. And sometimes it's hard to swallow. He said, Dad, it's hard doing a purpose. He said it's very, very hard, It takes a big sacrifice. I get it, he said. Jesus died for us all, and I said, yeah, that was his purpose. And he's like, yeah, but he said, what you don't understand is he had already had a good relationship coming into this world with his father. He said, and a lot of times, because you get caught up in purpose, sometimes you wasn't there. You didn't show up, or the whole nine. And I said, well, I had to listen. Because sometimes the first thing we want to do as parents is defend. A lot of times my kids always tell me, the first thing you do is you bring it back to you. I say, well, yeah, it's something when you've been through a lot, as I have, to share your experience. But the one thing I remember in coaching is a lot of times the kids don't want to hear your experience. And so, having that great conversation and coming in not knowing that we are talking about healing relationships. And, I just had to start this off giving God the glory, the interview, the mobile mentoring bus, 22,000 youth, 15 years. Hey, Heather, how you doing?
I am good, thank you.
Brother Dave?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was on or not.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, brother.
Okay.
So, again, Heather, we want you to take this conversation and lead us, because right now I'm very, very full and grateful.
Yes. You deserve this moment, Kelvin, so take it. Take it. We with you. Those people walking in purpose, those people who have seen you on this journey, these people who know, love, and support you and encourage you. We know you got that moment coming. So continue your moment. I wanted to talk about healing relationships in my own skin. So this is a different perspective that I would like for us to take on relationships. But before we get started, I just want to thank our engineer, Monique, here in the studio with us, navigating for us to make sure that we give you the best of what we have to give, and also for our co-host Dave, who is just an amazing man in and of himself, always bringing the wisdom, always keeping us grounded in our spiritual spaces as we navigate these conversations. So thanks, Dave. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm honored. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so when we're having this conversation about healing relationships, we constantly look at relationships and we're looking at the other person and we're looking at other couples and we're looking at the ideal way that we believe relationships are supposed to look and what they're supposed to feel like and be like. But I want to take a couple of steps back and I really want us to think about our own skin. And so it's something to be present in your own skin. It's something to know what your skin feels like. It's something to know what your skin tastes like. It's something to know what it feels when it goes through different phases of just living, right? And so I want us to look at this a little more deeply, with a deeper heart, with a deeper vision for who we are and who we are supposed to be and are destined to be. Because once you get the seeds of the knowledge and the wisdom and the information, let it water it and cultivate it. So even if you don't take all of the jewels that we're going to share with you today, definitely take those that resonate with you. Take those that are going to help you really get a sense of who you are in your own skin. And we need to really look at that as we're going into relationships, and I mean all relationships. So relationships often begin with some level of expectation, some level of what a title actually means versus what that role, and we've talked about this before, how you play out that role. And so, and I want us to look at this without judgment, because I think that's very important. When we start looking at things that are good, bad, right, or wrong, it does make you feel defensive. Well, that's not me. I don't do that, right? We're quick to talk about what we don't do. But the moment that we say it's something that we don't do, we have to look deeper because it's something that we are doing. And that message is for not only the person that's listening, but for ourselves. So I'm really an advocate that it's my stuff first. And then I can say maybe what I've experienced with someone else. But it's my stuff first. And this is how I have been able to continue to grow in my own skin. And I want to tell you a couple things as we're getting started, that one of the reasons that we have that deep sleep is because your body is constantly changing. When you look at our babies, when you look at newborn babies, they do a lot of sleeping. They do a lot of sleeping, but why? Why do they need so much sleep? Well, one of the reasons is that their bones, their muscles, the very fiber of who they are within that skin is constantly tearing and ripping and breaking and stretching. And can you imagine that by divine design, your body was meant to endure? Now, I want you to really, really marinate on that thought. Let it resonate within you deeply. So the times that we are asleep or unaware or unconscious are the times that we do our most growth. We may not recognize that during that time that we're sleeping or resting or unaware that we're actually growing, because you don't necessarily see the growth unless you step back for a while and then step forward and see yourself in a new way. You don't necessarily see the growth happening. You're a baby, right? The baby's not saying, I think I've grown 6 inches. I think I have teeth now. It's unaware. And so I'm using the baby as an example because I want us to look at this through baby steps. So let's take this baby step of this journey here together. Again, we're talking about in our own skin, how we heal relationships in our own skin. So starting at the beginning, I want the first thing that you think about is to recognize that you are growing as a person. Your body is growing, your mind is growing, opportunities are growing. They're happening when you're unaware. So that lack of awareness might come from somebody just walking by you, and maybe they have a coat that you like. Maybe there's a color or a fragrance that they're wearing. It is affecting you, and it is causing you to grow. You may not take it in that way because you're unaware. There are things happening around us in our environment, even when we're unaware. So look at that as a part of the sleeping process, or the process of your awakening. When you become aware, and it's amazing if you have children, this is a great way to look at that. You remember holding your child as a newborn, as a baby. Then you see them, then the next benchmark, they start to walk. That means their legs are stronger. They're fully developing as a person, a human being. Then you take them off to school for the first day, and they have these thoughts and opinions, and they're coming back excited about what they're learning. Then you have a teenager, and all the time you're looking. Sometimes you're aware, but because you get to see that growth every day. You get to see them growing, that we sometimes take that growth for granted. And the expectation is that they're going to continue to become. And then before you know it, they're adults, they're parents, they're grandparents, and you're watching these things unfold. But it started off just as a baby, just absorbing that information, what the first 7 years of life. It's just about absorbing more information, being more aware of your environment. So I want you to start off this process from that point of view, with recognizing that things are going to happen and you're going to be cultivated and shaped even when you're unaware. All right. And so as we continue to talk about this skin that we're in, what does that mean? Part of it is being present. Part of it is paying attention and paying intention, giving intention to the circumstances that are around you. Knowing that if you're grounded, knowing that your steps are already ordered, knowing that you are here for one of two reasons: to either serve a purpose or to fulfill a purpose. And sometimes people don't always understand what your purpose is. Whether you understand it or not, you are still fulfilling a purpose, even if that purpose is a placeholder, right? That purpose could be that you are somebody else's stepping stone. It could be that you're a part of this ripple effect, and something that you might say or might do might cause that ripple effect. And so this is a part of relationship building. When you're intentional about relationships, that means you give more effort toward that relationship. But it's still going to happen whether you're intentional about it or not. The people who you may work with, for example, that host of people, one person connected to the other. And if you miss a step, or if you are not present, or actually, let's say at work, your absence could affect the whole number of people around you, depending on what your job or your role is. But if you're working, that means you're a part of this intricate system anyway. So your presence, being there or when you're not there, has an effect on others and relationships with others because of that ripple effect. So maybe it's just that you tend to take on more of the load than somebody next to you. That's important. That's an important piece of even relationship building, because it's teaching you that the value that you bring to whatever it is that you do has value. That value then plays into you too, to understand that you have value. And so I just want to take a moment and ask Calvin and Dave, just share a little bit about your thoughts on that. When you think about, you can pick one particular role that you played or job that you had, and where you felt like you made the people around you impacted you and how you impacted them and maybe made a difference just by you being there. And when you weren't there, what was the reaction, or what was the impact of your absence in those spaces?
Brother Dave?
Good topic. I spent quite a few years building relationships. So in the military, and as I moved through the ranks, my responsibility increased. As my responsibility increased, then the importance of those who I was responsible for, accountable to, became more significant. So, as always, when you go to war, that responsibility intensifies. So when you talk about being comfortable in your own skin, one has to begin to first start with, as you said about growth, you should be, as the word would tell us out of 1 Corinthians 11:28, a man should examine himself. But in most cases, we're not taught that early on. We're more prone to entertain about someone else, not ourselves. But you cannot give what you don't have in you. So it was so important for me to develop from the inside out, not the outside in. And what I developed, people will become the recipient of. Some things I didn't have the wording to put it together like I do now. But I understood the importance of selfless service. And the only way I could give selfless service was to first work on me. Self-preservation became significant in order to make sure that when I begin to be in the environment of other people, I have something of substance to give them. So I think before we can move forward and being able to be that asset to others, where when my presence is not available, it's significant, not because of me as a person, but the values and principles that I set up by my actions to developing a strong character. So they would say, okay, we miss this individual. And often I still hear from soldiers today who, matter of fact, I got a few over in Afghanistan now, who are telling me they miss my leadership. But my leadership was not to be a leader to tell people what to do or command them what to do. My leadership was to be the one that would develop a principle that they want to follow. So even if I'm not alive, they still would be willing to follow those principles that I set up. But I first had to set them up with myself. And that's what I think is so significant. If we're going to work and be comfortable in the skin that we are in, we have to begin to know who that person is from the inside out, not the outside in. But most of the world will tell us that it's more important to have the external factors in motion versus having the internal factors.
Thank you, Dave. Calvin, your thoughts?
You know, the first question is, I think the answer to that is, we all must evaluate to heal. As Dave said, self-evaluation is so important. And a lot of times, plenty of times, we allow the excuse to be the reason for not doing. So self-evaluation and healing thyself and learning to love ourselves is very important in the now and the do. Part two, in my own skin, I'm a big advocate, and I think it's important. I'm a big advocate. I'm not a permissions guy. And me not being a permissions guy and I think that has everything to do with purpose. I'm just not in the mood to always ask, and sometimes that might come off the wrong way. But I'm very comfortable in this process. I think it has everything to do with my DNA. So I have to be accepting of some of these things as far as my own skin. It's important to do both. And that's what I find myself in understanding what you're saying is getting to a place of comfort with yourself. We culturally and, system-wide, even men, right? Trust is a very hard thing. And having trust, getting trust, gaining trust, learning to trust comes from being able to evaluate ourselves and not repeat the damage or the things that causes us to not trust. Learning to trust ourselves and our decision making, learning to do those things. So when you talk about what you were saying about in my own skin, right? If we govern that better, it'll be easier for mergers to happen in relationships. It'll be easier for mergers to happen in business. It'll be easier for mergers to happen in the community. So, in my own skin, Dave and Heather, I think I kind of understand exactly what you're saying. I get it. And I try to, really pay attention to the actual things within my possession and don't want it to be about me. But more importantly, when you are doing the things like this conversation right now, you're doing this for others. And one of the greatest messages I got today was from young Toma and Mahan, and he inboxed me and he said, Coach, you've been doing this for others. That stuck with me all day, man. And I share that because as I shared with you, his grandfather and my mother, and his grandfather used to drive around the neighborhood on 8 Mile and sell fruit and other things out of his own wagon. This is how he took care of his 7, 8 kids, right? My mother and father had 7, right? But to get that from him, because I coached him, was huge, right? And so within my own skin, again, great topic. Within my own skin, and I think everyone should evaluate and do that. I think what you're touching on is huge, and we need to just have a audience full of people just to have that.
Indeed. You know what? There's one of my favorite holiday movies. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. I think Jimmy Stewart is in that movie. But one of the things that I love about that, and I think as we're actually looking at this deeper message about being in your own skin, that he thought that after he was going through this crisis period, and I think a lot of us who have maybe gotten pushed to like the end, or you feel like you're at the end of your way, the end of your path, and there's no resolution and there's no out. I think when some of us get to that point, that's probably a good time to see that movie. And one of the reasons why is that he said that he thought that the world would have been better without him. That he was, if he was never born, that everything, he thought everything would be better if he wasn't there anymore. He thought he had more value dead than alive. And so the whole movie is really about him seeing the difference that he made in the world. Just small, everyday things. One of the ones that stands out to me was when he was a boy, he was working at a pharmacy. And the pharmacist, who was grieving at that point the loss of his son in this particular movie, mistakenly put poison in the medicine and sent him to deliver this medicine of poison to this child. And he recognized that it was a mistake that he made, and he tried to explain it to him, tried to tell him, and he ended up smacking him. The pharmacist smacked him and said, don't be disobedient. Go do what I told you to do. And he was like, but you put the wrong thing in there. You put the wrong thing. And he smacked him again, and he ran off and he left. But one of the places that he went was to his father for advice. He went to his father for advice. He went to his source. He went to the fastest, closest place that he thought he could get wisdom from. And the wisdom that his dad gave him was that even in spite of somebody being mad, if it's something that is right to do, you got to do the right thing. And so he ended up the pharmacist ended up getting a phone call telling him that the little boy did not fulfill his goal, which was to deliver this medicine. So he came in the door, and the pharmacist was furious with him. And he grabbed him and he was shaking him. He was like, but you put poison in the medicine. You put poison in the medicine. And he finally listened to him, and he realized that he was giving somebody poison. And so that one little, and it wasn't so little, but the one action where he used first he tried to plead his case. The second thing he did was sought wisdom. The third thing he did was sought wisdom from his father, his source. The fourth thing he did was come back to be accountable to what happened. And he insisted on sharing his truth. But what happened when he wasn't born, right, was that the person who was getting that medicine ended up dying. And the alternative reality, right, the person and he got, his license got revoked as a result of that. He got jail time as a result of that. That one decision, that one intervention that he made in his life could have changed the lives of that whole family, changed the lives of the pharmacist. That's huge. And you might think that the one small thing that you've done for somebody, maybe you gave somebody, I was walking with a group of people. It started to rain, and I happened to have my umbrella. A couple other people in our party had umbrellas. There was a woman that was coming, and she looked like she was struggling, and that water was just pouring over her. I gave her my umbrella. We didn't even stop. We kept walking by each other. I handed her the umbrella because I could share an umbrella with somebody else. And so my thought was just that one thing, just handed her the umbrella. And if you saw the look on her face when I gave her the umbrella, it wasn't a lot of words spoken at all. I just handed her the umbrella. And you could see it was like a burden was lifted from her. Like just somebody cared enough, because she looked like she was in that space where I've been before. Like, if one more thing happened today, I am just going to lose my mind. When you at that point, and there's some way, it wasn't a huge thing. It was an umbrella. But I could feel what it did for her, for somebody to hand her an umbrella. And so it's these things that we can do for one another. That's part of our healing. That's part of the healing. The one thing that you can do, or the multiple things that you can do, it has a ripple effect. Now, I don't know what happened to her after she walked past me, but my hope is that wherever she was and whatever she was feeling, she felt valued, loved, and appreciated, that somebody was willing to give up an umbrella. She didn't necessarily know that I was walking with the other people, but just a gesture, the random acts of kindness that we have the opportunity to do, that's our healing. That's also for us, not just for somebody else, because eventually that ripple effect is going to come back around to my life. It's going to come back around to someone who I love, who needed somebody, and somebody showed up strong for them. That's how I look at it. But that's my healing, that every time I can offer something, some part of me that has value. That umbrella I could have used that umbrella, but I felt like she needed it more than I did. So that's part of ways that we can help to heal relationships. That's a relationship between a stranger. But it's something that you can do, that you feel compelled to do. Do that thing. Do that thing and heal you, because that is part of what you can do for yourself as you're doing something for someone else. And I think that's a really important space to be in your own skin. We have opportunities every day to make those decisions, to make those choices, to open a door for someone, to say hello to someone. There are these things that we see or may think are so small and may not make a difference. That's the difference that you may want, but it may be totally different for what somebody else needs. So don't deny yourself that healing, and don't deny it from someone else.
It's yes. It's funny, Dave, that we would use a movie from before BC. Right, and she loved them old movies, which is just amazing. I call them B movies.
Classic.
Right, but she pulled the perfect lesson to get that point across, and I personally get it, right, and we have to having this conversation because it brings me to a debate a brother was trying to have. The guy ended up calling me, and I said, I'm no longer having that conversation. And he said, Cal, I said, because it's just someone who wants to have a conversation so you can make him feel that he's right. I used to have that disease that I always had to be right. And I found myself setting up people and putting them in that position, which was unfair to people, to put myself in a position where I had to always be right. I had that disease. But my point to the guy was the reason why we're not having that conversation no more is, one, I'm not wasting my time talking about something that's behind me. It's already an experience for me. I shared what I thought, and I have a solution, and these are the results. At that particular point, you want to counter and get your point across. I got your point, but it's trauma bonding. And because I don't want a trauma bond, right, it comes down to someone has to be strong enough and comfortable enough in their skin to move on into another space and another lesson, because life is about a million lessons.
Full lessons, yes.
It's a million lessons, right? And it never stops. But when you are talking about finding comfort, Miss Heather, that's where, for me, finding the comfort is a wrestle. Right, because it's like I said earlier, there are a lot of things you have to go through to get to a certain level of comfort, because God is always teaching, and for God to get you to where you need to be, He gonna put you in the fire. He gonna put you some things. He gonna test you, see if you is really His warrior, and how you can and do the work and endure. Dave, you. Again, I always say how amazing the things that you've seen and gone through to be even on this podcast, let alone be mentoring, right? I value the importance of that very thing, right? I value you, Dave, right? But I say that because me and you, we have the equivalent of two different worlds doing it for so long. You in the military for 30 years. I'm in the community for 30 years, right? And here we are side by side in our experiences and doing this work to improve the skin of many young people. And also the fathers and the families and everything. So, this is a great one. Heather, the healing relationships, I think we should spend some time at this. Dave, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I concur with what's been presented. And again, thank you for your kind words. They continue to be fuel that moves me forward, because no one ever wants to feel that their work is in vain. No farmer has ever planted seeds and not a harvest. But not vanity for ego, but for the investment of being a servant leader. When you serve, you're hoping that someone will grow. And I think that the opportunity of us coming together where we're all growing and now developing a level of being comfortable in our skin instead talking about now you can give to others. One of the things I realize as you go through our developmental phases, from childhood and adolescence, yada yada, as we said, life is nothing but lessons learned. They shouldn't be like curses; they should be lessons learned. And those lessons help us to prepare. It's like building Lego blocks. We're adding one block at a time to become stronger and established. This allows us to be able to give to other people. You can't give what you don't have. So learning to understand who you are from the inside out makes it more easier to be willing to help someone. One of my classic lines to many people is uh, that just saying hello to someone can turn their whole life around. And you talk about the classics. I'm from the classics, so okay, that's my era. The movie made in my era.
All right.
Uh, right, and life's lessons. I always said I was going to write a book called "Everything I Learned from Andy Griffith." Because there's so many lessons. But Jimmy Stewart is one of my favorite actors. He did another movie again that I thought was so important, and it showed. And I blocked this went to another block. It'll come to me. But it was so important because what it was showing was how we have to work together with each other. Oh, Mr. Smith goes to Washington. And sometimes that movie, he went in with great intention, but when he got there, the good old boys, said, this is how we do business. And it took for him to be strong in his own skin to still weather the storm despite the external factors that was up against him. So it's so important for us to work together, iron sharpen iron, and especially when we talk about helping other people and building relationships. There are a few relationships we have to establish first. A relationship with God. Second, we have to establish a relationship with me, myself, and I. And then we establish a relationship with others. The Bible tells us that first we should love God with all our mind, heart, and soul, and love our neighbors as ourselves. But there's a significant point here. It's not to love yourself as the world would do, but to love yourself in a way that God has made you his masterpiece and said how important you are. But most of us are not taught how to love ourselves. So if I don't know how to love myself, how can I love you? Most of us run away from the whole word of love itself, especially men, because it gives this worldly connotation saying that you be mushy, feminine, whatever it is. But all of these things had to be important because God, there was his last two commandments. And he ended it with, you love your neighbor as yourself. So we have to teach others, if they don't know, or share with others, I should say even, how to love oneself. And that loving oneself is really about self-preservation as a vessel for God in order to be used as a servant. And even as you gave the picture about Jimmy Stewart and helping that situation with the pharmacist, it could have turned a whole different way. But that young man, that little boy, had some comfort in his skin, maybe not at a heavy level of maturity because he had to speak out wisdom, but he had some level of comfort in his skin. And sometimes we have to be okay with ourselves. I think one of the major problems we see, especially with suicide and things of this nature, that people are not comfortable with themselves because they are allowing external factors, people, places, and things, to regulate, dictate of who they are. But once we learn to understand that God made us, He loved us, we had to be important, He put us even higher than angels, that we begin to understand how to love ourselves. And we have to take that time to invest in ourselves like we do with the kids, get them to read, get them to engage in other languages. All these things are investment in self, not for you to hoard, but for people as you continue to improve and grow to be a benefit to them as an individual. In other words, if I take care of me and preserve me the way God intended, you'll become a recipient of all that I've learned and grown from. So I think this is so significant in healing relationship, especially relationship within your own.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
And so this last segment or statement that I would like to really make is about finding comfort in yourself. So, I think it's important to recognize that everybody wants to belong. Everybody has an innate need to belong to a group whether that group is a group of friends, whether that group is a social group, whether that group is a church, or whether that group is a school. I mean, look at all the investment there is in group. You know, it's a big deal to be an alma mater from Detroit Central High School. I'll start there. But those types of sense of belonging are really important as human beings and developing and growing. And because that's so important, and we have to find a place where we have an identity, and that identity has value. And so it's one of the strategies that we're using for Emmy. One of the reasons why you can see and find that Emmy brand, that EMIY shirt, and the reason why that's so important, one is because it's actually a global shirt at this point. This shirt has been, quite a few countries around the world, quite a few states and cities around the country, around the U.S. But the ultimate goal is to create that sense of belonging. So when you see me in my Emmy and you're in your Emmy, regardless of if you're in a sorority or fraternity, regardless if you're from Michigan State or U of M, regardless of where you're from, we can connect on this very basic human level of encouragement. And that system, that level of comfort in that is contagious. It does have that ripple effect. So it also changes minds and it changes hearts. And we want to make sure that this level of comfort that we have with identifying with what we call this Emmy way, this Emmy movement, that continues to multiply, because we have to find really strategic ways to help people find that sense of belonging. So if you're at your wit's end, you have on your Emmy shirt, and somebody sees you in that Emmy shirt, the very least that's going to happen is somebody's going to nod. Somebody's going to say, I got you. We are on the same page. And it increases that sense of belonging. But it also, in the same way, increases that level of encouragement. That you belong to something good. That you when you see the mobile mentoring bus, that you belong to that identity. That you belong to that brand. That you support that brand. And every time you purchase that Emmy shirt or any Emmy apparel, that's another way to support. That's another act of kindness. That's another opportunity for that level of comfort that you might have to grow. And we want that to happen. We want people to grow. We want people to feel connected. We want people to feel encouraged. That level of comfort in just having the same brand and identity, just in your network, is important to your net worth. That's really important. When we're talking about change, this is one of the ways that you can do that. It seems like a simple thing, like we talked about. All these simple things add up to something very real and very important. So, and this is not just a plug, this is a strategy. So go to EMIWorld.com. If you don't have a shirt, get your shirt, but also get one for someone who you know needs encouragement, who you want their social network and social net worth to increase. So you want that identity to be a part of someone who's going off to college. You want that to be a part of identity of a student going into school. You want that brand that is of encouragement to be transcending any space that you're in. So give the gift of encouragement. Give the gift of encouragement, just like giving that random act of kindness. If it's an umbrella, do the same thing with the Emmy shirt. You don't have to do nothing. There's always something you can do. We're talking about the concern of suicidal ideation, people who are having suicidal thoughts. We're talking about our kids in crisis. We're talking about families who may be experiencing crisis. Mm-hmm. Give them something that is meaningful. Give them an opportunity to be encouraged, to be recognized, and be identified as part of this larger movement, this larger family of encouragement. So I want to make sure I shared that. But again, this is another step toward healing not just ourselves, but healing relationships from your own skin. So we need, for everybody who is listening today, anybody who is looking for a way to connect or reach someone, this is a great opportunity to do that. So be encouraged. Make sure you're able to share that that gift of encouragement with someone else. Calvin, your thoughts?
Change. I started to sing, Dave. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. I'm really feeling that today, but I just want you to, Heather, thank you for this great show. Dave, tell the people where they can meet you at.
You can reach me at drome7@yahoo.com or at FMAM Facebook.
Heather?
You can reach out to me at www.yourinspiredjourney.com. You can reach me by phone at 313-759-7855. Again, that's 313-759-7855.
And the great, of course, you can reach us at METV at YouTube.com. You can also reach us at EMIWorld. It would be crazy for me not to be proud. And thank you, Heather and Dave, for joining this vision and helping so many. I am very, very comfortable in saying prevention and solution in the same sentence for me. I'm very comfortable in saying I didn't have to go to nobody but God to get to this place in this area and seeing the actual results for people and families. But I gotta say, I am so grateful. I am so grateful that my success and our success is continuous. It didn't have to be, we don't have to have our fronts up. We got our hands to the plow to do this work. And just like METV right now, and just like, people been calling all day, hey, Cal, this, and had an incredible story today about our work. And it was simple, Dave. It was simple, Heather. I pull up to the car wash, right, to get the car wash. My wife is getting in the car with my brother-in-law, and there's a Lexus in the front of us, and the Lexus is going before us to get the car clean. This story is to share with you how God is very immediate in my walk and in my journey, as well as in my life, and I'm very, very full right now. So the young man gets out the car with his wife and his child, and they go in, and I gotta wait a half hour to get my car done. So they come get my car as they're finishing up his car, and I'm outside on the phone talking to my friend Raheem, and we're talking about the interview that's on Fox 2, and right, he's always been one to tell me, keep your grind on, Cal, keep your hands, keep going, right, because you do the work. There are a lot of people who got so much more than you but don't do the work. And we're having this conversation, then all of a sudden I hear, hey man, didn't I just see you on TV? And the young man come over to me, takes off his glasses. It's me, Brandon. I just saw your interview. Your mom, I just called my mom to get your number after seeing you on Fox 2. I said, B, I've been trying to get your number from your mama for at least 2 years. I said, what's happening? He was like, man, I was just telling my wife, that's the man that raised me, that helped me, that mentored me, that made me go to college. Like, because of him, right? And this is what he's telling his wife. And he said, man, this is God. I come out the room to call, and you directly behind me, getting your car washed, and he like, man, I got the help. I said, man, Deontay, I started naming off the kids. I said, I got them all. We all still working. We still out here doing this work. We applying solutions. People can't see the solutions because they enjoy the pain of problem. So they stay in it. We ain't got time for that. We losing too many boys. Boys 5 to 11, number 1 in suicide. We got 9 billboards up all of September in other cities to raise the awareness. I like people holding connections and all that. I say, man, but I don't have time for that. That ain't what God want me to pause for. And that pause, as I say, can cost you a whole lot. When you pause, the enemy was waiting on you to pause. That's why we got to be everyday men. We can't be sometimey. And so as I close this, as I'm sharing with you, carrying this banner is heavy. All right, doing this work is heavy, but I am so grateful that God chose me. We got a partnership now, Dave. Coach Salim is getting ready to now transfer he's been teaching Arabic for 30 years. We coach together. Now we got a partnership, Dave. He is now going to teach kids 6th grade to 9th grade. And we got a partnership, Dave. And he said, you know what he said? He said, it's Emmy. I get it. I see. I was like, Coach, you was the one that told me when we was coaching I had to give. I didn't even know I had to give. You the one said. He said, yeah, man, because I never seen nobody put together a family the way you put them people's family together and they was broke up. I said, well, look at us now. He said, I know. That's why I got to do this work. We got to do the young. I said, Coach, let's go. You know what I mean? All I did was ask him to come and mentor these kids and teach them Arabic. Now look at what we got. So that's God. And so if you can't count on nothing, Dave, then anybody that's listening, you better count on your family. And I mean, count on them and challenge them and make sure God is at the table to eat with you. As I told the sister today, Numbers 30, verse 2. Everything that come out of here, I got to do. With that being said, my name is Calvin Mann. God bless you and encourage me. I'm young. Put your family first. Peace.